is not scriptural. Democracy did not come from the Bible. Democracy is not God's idea. The Bible is a kingdom book. That is why most of us do not obey Jesus, even Christians. We have a difficulty obeying God because we live in a democracy. In a democratic society, the opinions of the citizens count. In a democracy, the people have the power. In a democracy, if you don't like the person you voted for last time, you can vote against them and put them out of power. That's a democracy. In a kingdom, the opinions of the citizens do not count. In a kingdom, you cannot vote the king out. That's why we find it difficult to live in the kingdom of God, because we were brought up in a democracy. So when the king speaks, we give him our opinion of what he said. In the Bible, there is no democracy. There's a king.
Hello everyone, welcome to Relate to You. Thank you so much for being here with us. As you already saw from the beginning of today's episode, we're going to dismantle the meme. So Kes, for this meme, what did you think of it?
At first, as I was listening to him, I was like, oh, he's going to say that socialism or communism is the way to go, as far as like what a society should be according to the Bible. And it kind of triggered pastor's preaching when he was talking about giving, and how just because the disciples shared everything that they had, it doesn't mean that we have to be socialists. So I was already preparing. He's going to say something about how the democracy is not the way, and there's a different form of government that is the way. But then when he brought the whole kingdom aspect to it, I was like, oh, okay. I see where he's going. Definitely never saw it like that. I've never, ever looked at our society in terms of how our government functions, the executive branch, the judicial branch, everything, and thought, is this biblical? Is this something that the Bible supports? And what is really hard, I think, is that the United States was founded by men that were, a lot of the foundations and what this society and this country is built on is coming from the Bible. Not everything, obviously, but there were those foundations, there were those fundamentals. And so to think that the whole aspect of a democracy is not biblical is a little bit interesting. Like I think as an American, and I wouldn't say I identify myself like a proud, patriotic American, but as an American and citizen of this country, there was a part of me that felt like I needed to disagree with him saying that a democratic society is not biblical. Like, it's what we've been taught. It's what's been the way we've been raised. We've been taught to, again, going back to different types of government, to look down upon different societies where they have these leaders, like in North Korea, where there's communism. You know, there's different places in the world where their government is just corrupt, and you look at the democratic society and you think that is the answer. See, the people have speech, they have the ability to voice their opinions, they have the ability to speak against injustice and to speak against, you know, all of these problems that are happening in society. And so again, because you live in a world where you see examples of bad governments, you think democracy is the way to go. But if we are looking at it from the angle of what it should be and what society should look like according to the Bible, what God would have intended, then yes, it makes sense that
It's a kingdom.
it's a kingdom mindset. It's a kingdom world, and you need a king. So that's my ¿cómo se dice? There's a word when you're introducing your thought. It's like your thesis, but in mock trial there was something else. Your opening statement. That was my opening statement.
Your opening.
What about for you?
Same thing. I had never thought about it like how democracy shaped us in a way to sort of question authority, to sort of question who's in place, and if we don't like it, to remove him, and how that could relate to our relationship with God, and how sometimes, you know, it's like God take the wheel, and then God takes the wheel, and it's like, well, but if you turn here and if you turn there, you know, we're trying to tell him what to do in a way, because we've been taught to, because that's what democracy is supposed to be about, where you voice your opinion, you tell the leader in place, hey, I don't like this, fix it, and they quote unquote fix it,
right?
Because that's why we put them in place to begin with. So I've never thought about it like that, but it does kind of make sense that even in that, sometimes we might have a hard time looking at or having a relationship with God, because maybe we've learned to see it as like, well, I can tell you what to do even if you're in authority, in an authority position, because that's what democracy does. Because obviously we have no reference as to how it would be to live under a kingdom.
And that's what I was also going to point at that, because obviously we're seeing a very small clip of a preaching, you know,
right.
Again, we're making our impression off of a 15-second to 1 minute clip of something, right? I think my question to dismantle it would be, what is the goal here? Is the goal democracy is not biblical, so therefore we should overthrow it? Is it, you know, because democracy is not biblical, we need to treat our society in a more kingdom mindset, so therefore treat your boss differently, the way you approach your boss, your president, your superiors, those in authority different, because we're trying to establish a kingdom mindset. That I have an issue with, because we don't live in a society where everybody believes in the God that we believe. So I guess the question would be, what is the goal here? If the goal is just you personally come to the realization that a democracy is not biblical and a kingdom is the way to go, that's the kingdom mindset, that's what you should have, where do I apply that? Do I apply that just in my relationship with God? And now I approach him saying, I am aware that this is not the way to go, so I'm going to approach you with more humility? Or in other ways, how is that going to affect? Like, okay, because I know that this is the way it should be, the way I approach my boss needs to be different. The way I talk about the president needs to be different. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think I have a little bit of, I'm processing as to, in that small short clip, what was the goal?
Right, absolutely. What I'm thinking right now, and how my brain is going with all of this is, I think, obviously, again, we didn't see the whole thing, but I think what we need to take from all of this is that God blesses everything, I feel. So, for example, in Genesis, in Exodus, and yeah, pretty much the first 5 books of the Bible, they don't have a king.
No,
it's not a kingdom mindset in those first books. In fact, when they ask God for a king,
he's against it.
He's against it. He's like, why? You're supposed to be different from other nations where they do have a king. So no. Right? So eventually he's like, you know what? Whatever. Let me give it to you. And he gives them kings, right? And so now you have a nation that is a kingdom mindset. And I feel that after that, the language of the Bible changed. It had to change. Now the way it was written, it was a kingdom mindset Bible, because you had to allow people to understand kingdoms, because
And
that was their
relate
language
to what they saw.
to what they saw. Yeah, they weren't gonna write in a democratic way if that wasn't what they were underneath, right, or what they were referencing to.
Right.
So, and let's also remember that the Bible is written in ways for us to understand it, if we manage to understand it, because even then there are times where we're like, what was that about? So a lot of the terms are going to be, I would say, even cultural. A lot of the terms are even of the times. So I took it more as that. And then, come Jesus wasn't about riots and even though he himself,
political things,
even he himself was about, in a way, came to do a revolution. He wasn't about being against the authority.
And the disciples thought that the Messiah was coming to overthrow the Roman Empire. They thought it was all political and in many ways kingdom mindset. You're going to come and reestablish the kingdom.
The kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like even then, I feel like God, just like he did with the Israelites when they asked for a kingdom, he's like, okay, I'm gonna give it to you and I'm gonna respect it and I'm gonna bless it. I feel the same thing happens with a democracy. I feel like, okay, you wanted that, you established it. It also happens that in America, it was established by what we can call Judeo-Christian beliefs. So I'm gonna bless it. I'm going to sort of support it, because that's the God we serve.
Hallamos gracia a
pesar de todo de nuestras cosas que quizás no sean las mejores decisiones. So that's how I saw it. I saw it like, okay, pero también I feel like the way he was talking about it was sort of giving us a reference of like, this is why we might have an issue about how our relationship is with God, because since we were brought up in a democracy where you can question the authority, now we want to question God's authority. And when are you gonna bless me? Why haven't you done this for me? If I'm doing this and that and that and that, why? And take a look at it. I mean, not so much right now. I don't think our democracy is it's based on merit anymore as it used to be. But democracy is supposed to be based on merit. People, you get what you work for. You need to have the aptitude for success, right? And entonces we bring that mindset with God as well, of like, God, I've done this. I pray, I read, I'm good to other people. I'm not attached to material, worldly things, blah, 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 blah. Why haven't you blessed me in this area? Why haven't you done this? Porque we do that in the world también. We do that in nuestra democracy. I studied, I went to university, I got all of these diplomas. I need that job. I want to get that job. I'm entitled to that job. So I feel like in that sense, maybe that was the goal. Maybe the goal was to make us conscious of, yet again, we have another obstacle that we need to overcome in order to really fall in a good relationship with God. And I think que también man, I lost my train of thought with that one. Pero so that's my opening statement.
I think for me, where I'm seeing, what can I take from it? I do think that a democratic society has affected the way that I think, in terms of the value of who I am as a citizen, the rights that I have. That's where I think it has shaped my view. We do live in a society where, for the most part, people abide by the rules, people abide by the laws. There's always going to be crime, but for the most part, even in the roads, I've traveled, I've gone to Mexico, I've gone to Europe. There's places where you're like, my goodness, there's no order here. There's no law here. People are walking into the streets. People are swerving and nobody is really abiding. I remember when we went to Greece, we went to Athens, the entire city was filled in graffiti. The entire city. I mean, anywhere you went, graffiti, because of all the political and all of the protests that has happened there, right? Here, obviously, we have seen a little bit of that, with different things that have happened in the last couple of years. Just go back to 2020 with, you know, different women's marches, with, you know, abortion, with Black Lives Matter. You've seen a lot of, we are upset about something, you know, the whole defund the police, that was also another movement. There was so many things that at least in the last 4 years almost, it has shown, no, if you find this unfair, if you disagree with this, the LGBTQ movement, gender, you know, everything, speak up. Mm-hmm. Make a change, make a campaign, start a fund here, start a fundraiser there, you know, a charity, lo que sea. I think in that sense, it has shaped the way we think, and in terms of like, if I were to see it within myself and my own life, yes, there are times where, for example, in ministry, to try to apply it, we need everybody here to clean the church. Well, I don't know if I want to invest my time, because I have a job and I have responsibilities, and I have to cook dinner, and I also have to clean my house, and I also have kids, and they have school, and you know, we are now like, I have a right and a responsibility to say no, because I come first, and my schedule and my commitments come first. I'm going to serve in ministry, but you know that I am only available these days out of the weeks and this time, and if I can't make it, I can't make it. I do think that in that sense it has shaped the way we think, and now it has seeped through the culture of the church, where, you know, we're really accommodating with people's schedules now. We're really trying to cater to that mindset. And so yes, I do think that has affected it. In terms of a spiritual level, like a personal relationship level, I would agree in part. Like, it's like, where's my answered prayer? Mm-hmm. Why isn't my effort honored? You know, we, in everything nowadays, back in the days I grew up when they wouldn't give trophies to losers. Now we live in a society where they give trophies to losers. And I do think that we do have that mindset of like, okay, you know, maybe I didn't fast and pray for 40 days, but I go to a life group. Lula doesn't go to a life group, as an example. So why haven't I gotten blessed? I go to a life group. I serve in ministry for at least 1 hour a week. And then I also go to church. I try not to miss a Sunday. And then I listen to Christian music. But Lula over there, she doesn't even do those things. So why hasn't my prayer been answered? In that sense, I do think we're entitled. I do think that we feel that we deserve. And I also think that that's why you see other countries so hungry and so willing to receive the message, the gospel, and because anything at that point is better than what they like. En ese aspecto son humildes to receive the gospel. Here in the United States, because we have it so good and because we have so much privilege, we hear more of serving God as more of a sacrifice, whereas for other places in other countries, they don't see so much the sacrifice, because viven una vida sufrida. For them, they see eternal life. They see hope after death. They see all of the benefit of serving God. And because they know what hard work is, they know what sacrifice is, they know what commitment is, no les cuesta, porque lo que ellos van a obtener es mucho mejor. Aquí, porque se puede decir de una forma, ya estamos viviendo en la tierra prometida, ya tenemos los beneficios, entonces nomás vemos el sacrificio. And so I do think that, yes, a democratic society, at least I'm seeing it from the view of America, has made us entitled.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. I agree on that one. There's another part that now I'm chewing on, where he said that in the kingdom, the opinions of the citizens don't matter, right? So I think I agree that my opinion to God, it really doesn't matter, right? Whether I like it or not, whether I think it's right or wrong, it really doesn't matter. God is gonna do what He wants to do because He's sovereign. He's in that mindset, He is the king,
right?
Right? He is sovereign, in my life, and I belong to him, and he can, I'm his subject. He can do whatever he wants with me. However, I do think that free will has to come into the conversation at some point, because while I am his subject, and I'm surrendering my life to him, his love, any true love, I think gives option. And God is saying, I want to use you, and you belong to me. However, you belong to me if that's what you want, right? So I want you to choose me, so that then, I'm giving you an option, which is why free will exists. Entonces, I feel like, well, obviously, la vida de todos es de Dios. Dios decide cuándo te vas, cuándo llegas, todo eso. But I do think that there's a lot of things in our lives where God's like, you have choices. You get to choose. This is the outcome I want for you. And you get to choose if you choose my way and you arrive to it, or you get to choose if you choose your way and you're still going to arrive to it because that's what I have for you. But meanwhile, you already went through ups and downs, right, versus how you listen to me in a way. So I do think that I'm not saying that our opinions matter, but I do think that God manages to have that perfect balance in, like, yes, your opinion's not going to destroy or make up God, because God is God.
Or change my will.
Or whatever. But I am going to let you have it, and I am going to let you live it if that's what you want.
I think in that aspect, if we're talking about the king and we don't have an opinion, I almost want to argue, is the kingdom mindset really the way that God intended? Because if we look at the Garden of Eden, and technically the Garden of Eden prior to the fall was what he was trying to do. Those days up until Eve making that decision and Adam making that decision, that gave you a glimpse of what God was trying to do. There was no king. Mm-mm. There was a relationship between God and his children, and they had intimacy, they had closeness, the Bible talks about that they would spend time with him, that they would talk to him, that they would walk with him. And so I would almost have to argue that is even the kingdom mindset the way that it was supposed to go. I think in a sense that's what makes God as complex and as amazing as he is, that he isn't just one thing for us. He isn't just king. He isn't just Lord, but he's also friend.
Father.
He's also father. He's also protector. He's also provider, So while I do agree that we have to have a mindset of understanding your place and understanding that you have a creator and that he, in a sense, it's his will over yours, I also don't think that we should extinguish the access that he has given us. He died for us so that we could approach him without shame.
Right.
So that we could have a relationship with him, so that we could, yes, I don't think that just because I voice and I say, God, I don't think that this is the way that God's going to listen. But then there's an example in the Bible where the Bible words it this way, and then God changed his mind and did not destroy the people in the desert because Moses pleaded for them.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of debate there, and maybe that's not a good example because I'm focusing on one example. But I also do think that in that sense that God has, and he's had such an intimacy with us, that es la misericordia de Dios que nos da para nosotros tener esa relación con él. We never forget that he's king. We never forget that his will needs to be done at the end of the day. And we need to submit, and we need to give up our will and whatever it is that we want out of the situation. But that doesn't mean that you can't voice to God how you feel or what even the desires of your heart. That is why you have that intimacy with him. So while I do understand what he's trying to do, which is he's trying to speak as hard and as one might even say controversial, because you're like, whoa, like you're saying this, like I don't have an opinion, I can't say anything against it,
clickbaits.
like in a sense, yeah. While I understand why he's doing it, I also think that two can be right. You can submit and understand the sovereignty and the holiness and the righteousness of the God that you serve, while still being able to enjoy the benefits of having a relationship with him as a child of God, because he allows it. And we have to constantly remember never to forget it. I think that's maybe what he's getting at. The moment that you're approaching to God in a different way of like, hi, you know, like, what's up, you know, dad, I've heard daddy God, you know, and it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, you know, to each their own in their relationship with the Lord. But I do think que debería de haber reverencia. And a democratic society does not encourage reverencia. I know in my lifetime, there hasn't been reverence and honor for those that are in leadership. For sure, they haven't proven themselves worthy either. But there was a time in my parents' time where they would talk about even Clinton, you know, actually Bill Clinton kind of screwed it up for everybody because of his situation. But prior to him, there was a lot of presidents who were not perfect. But because they were presidents, you know, the whole room would stand up.
Yeah.
There was honor given. Now with Biden, with Trump, with all of these examples of different leadership, you have people that they don't take them seriously.
No.
And if they're not going to take a president of a country seriously, why am I going to take my teacher seriously? Why am I going to take my boss seriously? Joel was telling me the other day, there was like, I don't understand how people don't understand that they have to behave a certain way in their job. Like, don't they know that if they do this, that they could get fired, that it affects their livelihood? And I'm like, people don't think like that anymore. People don't think, oh man, if I lose my temper, I could lose my job. If I cuss my boss out, I could lose my job. They don't think like that. If anything, they're like, you did me a favor. I don't even want to work here. Bye. So, yeah.
Or worse, I'm entitled to feeling how I feel.
Right.
I'm entitled to express it. And guess what? You're wrong if you fire me for that, because it's my truth.
There you go.
Truth.
There's a lot of layers, I feel, to this one
Absolutely.
clip. Like, again, like the whole like Garden of Eden, like what this is provoking out of me is wanting to study more of what was supposed to be. But at the same time, even though I don't think that was his goal, I don't think that I should walk around saying I'm going to overthrow a democratic society and I'm not going to abide by it. We're living in the society and the world that we're living in. We're not going to change it. But what we can change is being aware, self-awareness, of how this has affected me, and how this has changed the way I approach certain things, whether it's my relationship with God, even authority. That is what I can allow to change, but I can't change the reality of what's already in place in the country.
Well, I think, I mean, since you're leading into that conversation, and you've been leading into that conversation of like what it is, democracy better than anything else, really? I do think that it is. I do think that democracy is, while it's not biblical, like he says and points out, and I agree, I do think, again, that God blesses a certain standard when it's based on good ideals and good morals and good, you know, and I think that for that democracy, which is very correlated with capitalism, I do think that it's the best government. Now, that you have the best people in places of power, no, we don't. But I do think it's the best government where, again, very similarly to God's love, people have a choice. Versus other countries where they don't have democracy, they have something else, something more along the lines of dictatorship, or even a communist country where, again, they have a totalitarian sort of power. There's not a lot of choice. There's not a lot of choice. And so I do think that that's probably why, another reason as to why in these countries when you bring the gospel to them, they find a new way of thinking. They find, I have a choice.
Yeah.
I can I can love this God that loves me just as I am and doesn't ask me to do X, Y, and Z. Well, he does, there is a standard to be a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
But the standard is still good for you. The standard is to not lie to other people, all the 10 commandments, the fruits of the Spirit. These are things that are good for you either way. So I think that it would be amazing to study or to research how different are people's faiths depending on their government versus us. Because while I agree that in a government sense only, democracy is the best and capitalism is the best, I wonder how, for example, the church in China is doing, how their faith is shaped by their government. Because they have a communist government where you really don't have a choice.
You can't choose.
What I tell you to think, it's what you're supposed to think. And so I wonder how it would feel to follow God in that sense, And I think maybe in that sense, because we don't have a reference to what a kingdom would look like, it's hard for us to realize, there are people out there that live by what the quote unquote king says, right? And I wonder if it's easier for them to follow God, to follow, the Bible or whatever, because they're already in that mindset of like, this is the ultimate authority, I need to fall under it, versus with us that we are in a democratic and he shut off.
Sorry guys, our system died, but we were gonna go ahead and finish this thought anyways. That's fine.
So we were about to be done, but so just basically I think that's what I'm interested in right now, to find out how
it could affect
it, and I'm not saying that if they have more faith than us, but how is their dynamic with God versus someone that it's like that's here, like you said, that has it easier in a way, and we have pretty much everything at the tip of our fingers, versus other people that are like, man, I'm praying for food and God gave me today's meal,
right?
And we're like, man, I don't know where to go, there's so many options. So
I think and as we're saying this, like, yes, while I understand where he's also coming from, and we're saying, how depending on what government you're under, how that can affect your faith, I also feel like I can't help but see all the benefits of having a democratic society. Mm. I mean, if it wasn't for us having a democratic society, we would not be able to worship as freely as we do. Mm. We would not be able to vote against abortion and try to make change in that sense. Is there a double-edged sword in that sense, where you can also have other things be allowed in law? Yes, but currently it's what it's being used for us to be able to talk about this as freely and not get censored and not get flagged and removed on YouTube and on everything that we use, because it is a free society.
Right.
And so lots that we unpacked, but we hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.